authors, book lovers, and storytellers. Welcome to another Reader's Magnet featured author interview. My name is Mark, and I am your host for today. And together with me is one of the Reader's Magnet featured authors, here to talk more about his journey as an author and his book. Everyone, please help me welcome Frank E. Mcginity. Hi, Frank. How are you?
Hello.
Yeah, thank you so much for attending our interview today. We're so happy to have you here. And personally, I'm so excited to have this interview with you because I just can't wait to know more about your book and
Yeah.
your journey as an author and the things that you want to share to the world. But before all of that, Frank, can you please introduce yourself to our audience right now?
Yes, I'm Frank Mcginity. I live in Santa Barbara, and recently I've now published two books. And the one we're going to talk about today, of course, is Get Off Your Street. And it's really a personal travelogue. And that book, you say, where did the name Get Off Your Street came from? I was in high school, Jesuit high school in New York. And I remember the English teacher would look out to the class and he'd say, "Hey guys, get off your street." And what he
Mm,
meant, get out other places. You'll learn a lot from it. So that's where the title came from.
okay.
And then I was traveling with my wife. I was going to go to Mexico City. And I asked around in Santa Barbara, "Hey, what about Mexico City?" "Oh," they say, "I don't know. It's a little dangerous down there." Well, I went down and I was elated to see what a great city Mexico City was. And it inspired me to write my first article. And I came back and submitted it to the newspaper, and oh, they liked it and they published it. So then it became every time I took a trip, and you're on those long airplane rides, it was a great time to write an article. I'd come back, and the local newspapers would typically always publish the articles of my trip. And in this case, it was over about a 15-year, actually a 20-year period that I would take trips, and then I included them in my book. And this book that I just published is actually the fourth edition. And it had to be the fourth edition because I just completed traveling to all seven continents. So this
Wow.
book, which is close to 300 pages, includes all seven continents on it. And, it's been very rewarding. And you can use books, or certainly travel books, several different ways. For example, you're reading the New York Times, and the Times is talking about Auckland, New Zealand, and you 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 go back to your book, and it brings back memories of that period, and the fact that you've been there, you understand the article better. Uh, these are different reasons why, and friends travel to different places, and I've had a lot of fun giving the book out to friends, and they associate with their own trips or they're going on a trip. So, particularly, this might appeal to people over 40 or 45 years old. And I think you'll find I hit most of the spots, as I say, all seven continents.
Wow. What an experience, huh? But what specific book is this, by the way, Frank? This is you're talking about
Well,
the I'm so sorry. The book that you said that you had seven that you visited seven types of the
yeah,
continents of the world.
right.
What book was this again?
That's the book that I just described. Get Off Your Street.
All right. Okay. So,
My
um,
personal travelogue. Yeah.
thank you for sharing about that. But I'm actually trying to I'm more interested and is more um um what do you call this? Intrigued about your other book, which is the Irish Stories and Events from the California branch of the American Irish Historical Society.
Yeah.
And
This is an interesting year for me because I have two books being published.
that's amazing. And
The,
congratulations for that.
the other book on Irish stories represents presentations over a 40-year period in a group we call the American Irish Historical Society. And the American Irish Historical Society, many people, of course, never heard of it, but it
Hmm.
was established by Teddy Roosevelt. He was one of the founders
Hmm.
in 1893. And what they did in those years, the Irish were discriminated against. If you're Irish, get off the lawn and do not apply, that type of thing. And our society was founded to uh, make sure the record was straight, that there wasn't distortions about the Irish. And it's grown since then. Now, my involvement is I've had a California branch that I've run for the 40 years. And over those periods, and the book contains mainly the presentations of people that would speak to our group. And it varies between uh, talks on Ronald Reagan, Seamus Heaney, a famous poet, uh, Nicholas Dinn, who's very important to Santa Barbara history,
Hmm.
John John McKay, who was famous for his gold mine discoveries, articles like that, and throw in Aran Islands. Well, I think we covered pretty much all the interesting history
Topics
of,
about Irish.
yeah.
All
And
right.
I think it's even considered like a reference book. And
So is it,
you wouldn't sit down and just read it through like a novel, but you would, and it's true of my travel book, you use it at different times to look up a location or a trip that I took, or in the case of the American Irish book,
mhm.
uh, a piece of Irish history.
All right, so basically the book is all about maybe what do you call this? A documentation about the history of Irish history, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
All right.
And
So
there's even a write up about Ronald Reagan's speech. Now,
mhm.
I was in New York. They shut down Park Avenue for Ronald Reagan to come to our society's meeting. And he spent 2.5 hours there and gave a speech. That's also in the book.
Okay. So anyway, you mentioned that you give some copies of your book to your friends, which is the your personal travel book.
Yeah.
Do you receive do you receive some comments from them? What type of comments do you receive from your friends?
Oh, yeah. No, well, some of the friends have traveled with me, so it was real interesting to them. But, they associate with it, or they're going to on a trip and they say thank you because this gives us a little background. For example, if you go to Paris, we found a really neat hotel, and
Mhm.
and people can pick that up from the book because, as you know, Paris can be very expensive. So,
Correct. So it's like a travel guide
yeah,
type
right.
of book. Okay. Okay. So what were you aiming to achieve after writing those books, Frank? Your two books.
Well, aiming, I would say it gives you a satisfaction, and it just flowed. In other words, I had written all these articles for the newspaper, so, and then I added a few myself that hadn't been published. So you go with the flow, put it that way. And this has just evolved nicely into a book. And it was tested in by being published, different articles being published, and people liked it when they read it in the newspaper.
That's great then.
Yeah.
So, Frank, can you share some like your favorite line on each book? Just so you know, it is something that we are looking forward to read and like let's say a climax on the book or
Yeah,
something very important.
yeah, I wouldn't say there's any particular one because it's so diverse to all the different places that we went. So you might even consider it a very good reference book for travel.
Okay,
And
then. So,
and the point is, you pick up a good idea here and there, particularly in our age group. That can be worth certainly buying the book, and
mhm.
that's I think the best line I could give is that if you're traveling or you have traveled, you'll find something in the book that you can relate to.
Okay, okay. All right. So, I'm curious about this, Frank. You said that you are still working now. You're at the office and still working.
Yeah,
And
well, as I mentioned, I'm still working because, first of all, I like to,
mhm,
and I should be retired. You're right, but
mhm.
I like the work. And second, I see a number of my associates that, I mean, you can only play so many games of golf and this type of thing, and then after a while, you can't play golf anymore. So this gives me satisfaction, and I enjoy the work. And it's very interesting. My son had a good comment. He says people in their 80s, assuming you're educated enough, when they pass away, it's like a library burning down. That was one of his lines. And the point is, you have all this knowledge and you should continue to use it. And that's what I feel I'm doing on the books.
Yeah, that's what I'm about to ask. Because, like, the fact that you're still working and then still have time to write books is
Yeah,
amazing to me. I'm
yeah.
so impressed by that, you know. But have you ever experienced any like a writer's block, and how do you handle that?
Well, I think I'm approaching my two books differently, as I mentioned. I know people get up in the morning and write for 2 hours, something like that. But this mainly went with the flow. The flow being I had published a lot of these articles, and also it was easy to write articles when you're coming back from a trip. And I segmented it over so many years. So, and particularly the travel book, the Irish story book, of course, is a compilation of presentations by knowledgeable people on Irish history.
Wow. I'm so curious, Frank. When you write your book, do you use the traditional one or the digital type of writing? So, like, do you write it on a book or like on a device?
Oh yeah, I always now it's interesting because I know T.C. Boyle. I've collaborated with him on a book on a person called Stanley McCormick, but
Hmm.
he uses an old typewriter that he's used for years to write his books. But
Wow.
But in my case, it's very easy now because you can type on the computer, you know.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
in
Which
Word,
pretty advanced now.
yeah, everything I've done now is in Word. And I never knew how to type, but once you get into it, it's pretty easy.
I
You
know,
know,
right?
two or three fingers and you can type anything, you know.
Okay, amazing, amazing. That's great. Um, Now, is there anything else that you are currently writing or like cooking now, Frank, or as something to get, excited about a new
Yeah,
project or maybe?
yeah. I've got some research because I've given talks on growing old and also uh, passing on your assets to the next generation. And I've come up with a good line. If you are born into a wealthy family, you're born with a handicap. What? What do you mean by that?
Mhm.
Well, if you notice and you've read in the papers all these stories of the second and third generation blowing the money into drugs, all these different things happen to them because they didn't earn it. It's a very serious problem. I've given two talks on this, and I like someday to be able to publish a book about that because I think I could do a lot of good to warn people. Money can be devastating to you, and you have to be very careful, particularly the big the big wealth. So
Right, right. I agree.
that's my next book if it ever happens.
Wow. Okay. Frank, can you please show your book to us and invite the people that who would be interested in buying your book?
Sure, love to show it.
Sure. Show it, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Please, maybe like doing it like this,
There you go.
and then invite them to buy a copy of your book.
Yeah,
So that is Get Off Your Street by Frank Mcginity. It is a personal travel blog or a book that, you know, can be bought through Amazon and Barnes and Noble, right?
right.
Okay, there you go, guys. Okay, thank you so much for that, Frank.
You'll enjoy it. Yeah, and it's good.
Okay.
You know, it's 276 pages, so you get a good book for the value.
Wow, I can see that you've been a lot through different locations, huh? Amazing. I'm so impressed.
Yeah,
Anyway, all right. I think I have asked all the questions I have prepared for you today, Frank.
yeah.
And this concludes the interview for today. Now, for my last question, Frank. Anyway, what do you think makes a good book?
It's a tough one. I think a person's knowledge, background knowledge of the subject, you know, and you can tell in a good book how much research has been put into it, you know. And then a third thing, like all of us as individuals, we have a style in writing. And sometimes, actually, the Irish have a particularly good style that they've been born with, I think, in many cases, because you see some of the top authors are Irish, particularly in the past.
Mhm.
So uh, that's my observation, I guess.
All right. Thank you for that, Frank. Now take notes, all of you. So, yes, that's Frank E. McGinnity, author of the book Irish Stories and Events from the California branch of American Irish Historical Society. Book is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Again, thank you so much, Frank, for attending our interview for today. As we say it here at Reader's Magnet, we share your story with the world. Bye, Frank.
Bye bye.
Thank